how can the startup sector solve the energy crisis? How can the startup sector help in the green transition? I know better than try to tell you what you should do. A politician should stay on his turf. But I might be able to draw you a map of the problem at hand and maybe give you a few hints on the way. So what is the goal? This is the goal. We have a climate crisis. We have an immense need for innovation. This is the goal we set a few years back. This was a big breakthrough. Since then, we have moved the goalposts several times already, and we here in Finland have set a goal that is even more ambitious. So why have we done that? Because we see that it's important. It makes environmental sense, but it also makes economical sense. The market for clean solutions is growing, whether we are in it or not. So why not be in it? Why not set goals that push the market ahead? We are here to solve a problem, but we do not solve it in a void, a vacuum. As always, there are demands, there are constraints. It calls for creativity, for thinking different, if you allow me to steal the slogan of a fruit company. But what drives creativity? I talked about constraints. Isn't that a constraint, something that limits us? I'm an architect by profession, and through that I have some thoughts on creativity. There's a myth about creativity that nothing should limit it, that creativity is like a free spirit that should have no limitations. And in part, it's true. Creativity is limitless, but limits drive creativity. Limitations make creativity come through. Let's take an example. If you design a building, the worst point of departure is when everything is possible. If there are no limitations or constraints, it becomes undefined, bland. There is no structure, no tension, no highs, no lows. Or if you design a master plan, a city, is an uninhabited plain the ideal point of departure? A flat surface with no topography, no existing structures or limitations? Certainly not. Nothing good would come out of that. But when you have a varied terrain, maybe some existing buildings that you have to take into account, then something good and interesting can happen. Then you have clashes between the old and the new. Then you have forces that you have to adapt to. You have multiple situations where you have to think, to adapt, to innovate. Constraints create creativity. Constraints are our friends. So how can the startup scene solve the climate crisis? Where are we today in this field? Why doesn't this image push us enough? Many things have happened this year. This guy has happened. The war in Ukraine has forced us to cut ourselves off fossil fuels. Suddenly we realize that the dependence on fossil fuels, the prime reason for the climate crisis, is the source of all evil, in a very literal sense. Caring for the world didn't push us enough, but maybe this did. When the pipe is cut, we are forced to act. Now we have a constraint. Now the easy situation is behind us. Now we don't have pipes of stuff coming in from the east. Our lazy days are over. Now that is cut off, we are constrained. Now we can create. Thanks to Putin, we are in the ideal position to innovate. And of course, we have a real problem. This is where our emissions are going. The top line is a prediction if we continue on the path we are on today. The line below is the path that our decisions, not our actions, are taking us at present. But that's not enough. The line at the bottom is where we should be going. That's the path towards limiting warming to 1.5 degrees. That's the only sustainable path. It's not a path without consequence. 1.5 degrees is plenty, and here in Finland it would mean more, but it isn't Armageddon-like catastrophic. So where should we focus? Putin directs us to focus on energy, and I agree. 3/4 of our emissions come from the energy sector. Let's focus on that. So the board is set, but what should we play? Where should you innovate? I take the freedom of being a politician and order the solutions from you. We have several challenges. We have emissions. We need to produce energy more efficiently. We are past the time when producing electricity means having a huge pot of boiling water, the fumes of which we direct through a turbine that then powers the whole country. We need several different sources of energy, and we need innovations in all of them. We also need to adapt to a situation in which several of these sources of energy have a varied output. This leads to several challenges that you can solve. Having varied output leads us to having a need for storage. This is a big shift. We need to store the energy we produce. We need batteries, but the technology doesn't scale sufficiently today. The materials we need are not unproblematic. We need other means of storage too, big water basins that can be released, new fuels that can be produced when electricity is abundant, fuels that then can be used to produce electricity when supply is lower. Smart usage. We need to cut our use, and we need to time our use. Our devices need to get smarter. Our cars can power our houses, and our houses can power our factories, and deliver energy back to storage or the grid. It's not a one-way street anymore. If we look back at the electricity market of the past few months, when the demand gets over a threshold at which we need to produce electricity using expensive fuels, the price skyrockets. If we can cut this peak and time shift the use, we get lower prices and lower emissions. The market for many things have changed in the past years. We order a cab in different ways. We order food in different ways. We reuse materials. We book our hotels. We share things. We can be smarter about how we use electricity too. These are big changes. These are big challenges. But you can come up with big solutions. But small solutions can also make a difference. This is the scheme for a frequency converter. It's a small device that is increasingly present in electrical engines. You can see them all around you. Implementing them saves energy. At present, this machine saves 135 million tons of CO2 yearly, and it's only installed in a small share of electrical motors. In a world where we work with complex systems, systemic changes can have a big impact. If one small component is multiplied through the system, the impact can be huge. Everything is interconnected. Effects multiply when we build change upon change. So shock the system, shake the system. We have a goal, we have creativity, we have constraints, we have solutions. Do we need more incentives? Maybe so. Until 2008, a drop of fuel was made of fossil oil in Finland. But in 2008, a distribution obligation, for lack of a better word, was implemented. That stated that a certain percentage of fuel sold should be bio-based. This created a pull for products, a pull that created a market that forced investments. That turned Neste, a provincial oil company, into the biggest producer of renewables in the world. We created an incentive that created a market. I showed you this picture earlier. If we could monetize the peak energy, or rather saving peak energy, we could create a market and a change that could have a big impact. Forests create a lot of discussion and debate in Finland, understandably so. Forests are often privately owned. It's private property. It's my forest. I feel for it. But even so, a forest serves a common interest. We need the carbon sinks. But today the market doesn't incentivize maintaining them. The economical model incentivizes selling wood, cutting down your forest, not keeping it. If we want sinks, why don't we pay for it? A monetary model where both things generate income would ease the debate and give me more time for my family, not having to debate these things on Twitter. So we have goals, we have creativity, we have constraints that rather should be called inspiration. We know the problem, we need solutions, we need to create incentives. This is important. You have creativity. Get on with it.